Hey there. Tonight, we're stepping into the blistering heat, choking smoke, and endless clang of the medieval forge, the place where sweat and steel shaped the world. You've seen blacksmiths in movies, sparks flying, metal gleaming, but trust me, the real story is nothing like that. It's not romantic. It's not noble. It's loud, brutal, and it never, ever ends. This is the life of a man who didn't ride into battle, but made sure others could. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let yourself drift into the world of fire, iron, and quiet endurance. You don't remember the moment you were born, but if you did, it wouldn't be soft hands or lullabies. It would be smoke. Thick, heavy smoke curling through beams, clinging to rafters, finding your lungs before your voice even had the strength to cry. The first breath you ever took was warm with ash. The first sound you ever heard was the hammer. Not a welcome, not a song, just metal striking metal, over and over, until the rhythm became a part of you. You weren't born in a house, you were born in a forge. Not beside it, not near it, in it. Your mother labored on a bed of straw while iron hissed in a nearby trough. Your father never stopped working. He shouted once, a command, not a celebration, and then went back to shaping nails for a farmer's cart. There was no silence, no stillness, no moment of peace. Just heat. Always heat. The kind that makes skin stick to skin and sweat burn your eyes before they ever truly open. You don't get a cradle. You get a crate. An old coal box lined with burlap, pushed just far enough from the flames that you don't cook, but close enough that the soot still settles on your cheeks. Your blanket isn't soft wool or fresh linen. It's a smoke-stained tunic that once belonged to your oldest brother, who died before he could swing a hammer right. Your lullaby is the groan of bellows, the crackle of coal, the rasp of iron dragged across stone. There's no nursemaid, no doting aunt to hold you. Your mother's arms are strong, but tired, and always coated in black smudges. She feeds you with one hand and stirs a pot with the other. Sometimes she hums, not because you're crying, but to drown out the sound of arguing customers outside. And your father? He holds you once, briefly, squinting through the haze, not to admire you, but to check if your lungs work. You screamed. He nodded. Then he handed you back. That's love here, measured in volume, not affection. As you grow, you don't crawl toward light. You crawl toward warmth. You find comfort in the glow of embers, in the hum of the forge. Other children might chase chickens or crawl under tables. You reach for tongs. You pull yourself up using the side of the anvil. You fall into ash piles and learn to blink the sting away without making a sound. Your first lesson isn't the alphabet or a prayer. It's, don't touch that, it's hot. And then you touch it anyway, because that's how learning works here. Pain before understanding, blisters before comprehension. When you cry, no one rushes to comfort you. They glance maybe if the scream is loud enough, but mostly, you're expected to figure it out. That's how it's always been. The forge doesn't care how small you are. It doesn't care if your hands are soft. Fire doesn't wait for you to grow. It burns just the same. By the time most children are learning to walk, you already know where not to step. Which stones tip, which tools bite. You know the smell of burned leather and scorched fat. You can tell the difference between a good hiss and a bad one. You flinch instinctively when the hammer misses its mark. You don't laugh yet, but you've started to grunt. Short, low noises of effort, of mimicry, of a child learning the language of labor before the language of words. You've seen the back of your father's hand more often than his smile. Not out of cruelty, just routine. Corrections come hard and fast, and they always come when the forge is loudest. There are no soft edges here, no gentle years, only heat, weight, and expectation. You are not growing up next to the forge. You are growing inside it. Formed not just by time and care, but by pressure, smoke, and the relentless rhythm of hammers. And before you even understand what life is, it has already decided what yours will be. You don't learn to crawl on clean floors or soft rugs. You learn on hard-packed dirt streaked with ash and stray nails, the kind of floor that bites back when you slip. There's no baby gate, no safe corner marked off with cushions. The only boundary is the edge of the coal pit, and you learn quickly where that line is. Not because someone tells you, but because your fingertips find the heat before your mind finds the danger. You crawl towards sounds, not lullabies, but clangs. The steady rhythm of hammer on iron draws you like a heartbeat. You move with caution, not because you were warned, but because you weren't. The warning is the pain, and it teaches fast. You crawl past piles of tools heavier than your entire body, past buckets of water black with soot, past boots that never step aside for something so small as you. There are no games here, no encouragement, only the expectation that you won't get in the way, and if you do, you'll learn not to next time. Your world is a four-legged shuffle through shadows and sparks. You don't reach for toys. You reach for what's near, and what's near is always dangerous. A chisel, a lump of slag, a hot horseshoe that looks like a shiny moon. You don't know the names, but you learn their moods. Which ones are safe to touch? Which ones hiss when held too long? You pull yourself up using the same anvil your father slams into day after day, the vibration traveling through your bones like a warning. You stumble over bellows cords and crash into barrels. You cry sometimes, but only until the noise of the forge drowns you out. If someone hears, they might glance, but they won't come running. They're busy. You're expected to be small and silent. There's no pride in crawling, just urgency. You move to avoid being stepped on, to avoid being burned, to fetch what someone dropped but didn't notice. Your presence is tolerated as long as it's quiet and useful. Outside, other children take their first steps on grass. They fall and are lifted, cheered, kissed. You fall and are told to stop getting underfoot. Their worlds are built of playpens and sunshine. Yours is built of iron filings and shouting. You don't know what a meadow is, but you can smell when iron is about to be quenched. You can tell when someone forgot to turn the tongs the right way. You know the difference between a hammer swing meant to shape and a swing meant to punish. You walk not because you're ready, but because crawling on this floor leaves your knees raw and your palms black. Your first steps aren't joyful. They're strategic. Standing helps you dodge. It helps you carry. It helps you become slightly less in the way. No one claps. No one smiles. You take the steps, and then you are expected to never stop. You never get lost, because the forge is your map. You know every crack in the floor, every spot where the heat leaks through the stones. You learn not to lean on the wall near the furnace. It burns. You learn not to drink from the bucket near the door. That's not water. You learn to spot when your father's back tightens, when his fists clench, when it's better to pretend you're not there. And through all of this, You never ask why, because no one ever asked that here. You were born near the fire, and now you crawl beside it, walk around it, sleep under it. There are no other options. There are no what-ifs, only next. Next step, next task, next injury. You learn to walk the way iron learns to bend, under heat, under pressure, with no softness left untouched. And even if you can't say it out loud, even if you're too young to know the words, a part of you already understands. This forge is your world, and you belong to it. You don't remember being given a toy. No carved wooden animals, no cloth dolls, no whittled figures from festivals long past. What you remember is the hammer. Not a child's version, not a plaything, but a real hammer, one your father used before his grip outgrew the handle. It's chipped on one side, worn smooth from years of sweat, and still too heavy for you to lift with one hand. But it's yours, or at least no one stops you when you drag it by the splintered shaft across the floor. It doesn't squeak or shine. It doesn't roll or bounce. It thuds. Dull, loud, final. It bruises your foot the first time you drop it. You cry and no one looks up. They hear the sound, and they know lesson learned. You sit there for a moment, waiting for someone to help. No one does. Eventually, you reach out, grab the handle again, and pull it closer to you. It becomes a kind of companion. Not friendly. Tools don't care. But it's always there. When no one's looking, you press your palm to the metal head and feel how cold it stays, even near the fire. When the forge quiets for a moment, you tap it softly against a brick just to hear the echo. It's too heavy to lift properly, but you try anyway, again and again, wobbling under the weight, arms shaking, teeth clenched. You don't think of it as a game. You think of it as preparation, because you've already seen what the hammer does. You've seen it split metal open like fruit, carve shapes out of chaos, command silence in a room full of noise. Your father doesn't carry it gently. He wields it like judgment. When he misses a strike, the whole building seems to flinch. When he lands one right, the sound rings out like a bell made of fury. You watch from the corner, hammer in your lap, waiting for the day your hands will stop trembling. Sometimes you mimic him. When no one's using the anvil, you sneak over and try to copy the motions you've seen 1,000 times. Your swing is too slow, too wide, too soft. It makes your wrist ache and your shoulder burn. The hammer falls sideways, hits wrong, skitters off the metal like a clumsy insult. You wince, ashamed, even though there's no one watching. You want to do it right. Not for praise, you know there won't be any, but because doing it wrong feels like breaking something sacred. Eventually your father sees you and snorts. Not quite approval, not quite dismissal. He doesn't take the hammer from you. That's something. He says nothing, walks past and leaves you standing there with burning arms and a growing sense that this tool, this weight, this noise is your inheritance. Not land, not money, not books. Just the hammer. Just the expectation that someday you'll use it the way he does. It becomes part of your body before it becomes part of your skill. You carry it more than you swing it. But the carrying matters. It changes your grip, thickens your fingers, makes your knuckles ache in quiet, throbbing pulses. When you walk, you lean slightly to the side where the hammer drags. When you sit, you rest it across your knees like a sleeping pet made of steel and obligation. You don't name it. That would make it something magical, something playful, and you know better than that. It's not a friend. It's a future. One you didn't choose. One you don't get to refuse. It doesn't comfort you. It trains you. Every bruise, every blister, every clumsy swing, they're all shaping you, the way you'll one day shape iron. And you already understand, in the way that children sometimes do without needing words, that this hammer will never leave your life. It will be there in your best moments and your worst, heavy and demanding, never forgiving, never forgetting. Your first toy, your last tool, and everything in between. You don't remember there being a ceremony, no feast, no words spoken over a fire, no nod from your father to mark the occasion. You simply wake up one day and things are different. Not visibly, not dramatically. The forge still crackles, the smoke still stings, the bellows still groan like tired lungs, but the way people look at you shifts. You're no longer just the child in the corner, covered in soot and silence. You're expected now, expected to show up, to listen, to act, and never, ever ask why. You're 6 years old, and suddenly your name isn't spoken so much as barked. Boy. Here. Now. You carry buckets of water that spill all over your boots. You sweep coals that don't want to move. You hand tools you barely recognize to hands too fast to wait. You do it wrong. You do it again. You learn not through lessons, but through the absence of correction. If no one yells, you've done it right. If someone curses, you start over. You watch the men who come into the forge. Farmers with split plowshares, hunters with broken arrowheads, carpenters with dull saw teeth, and sometimes knights. They enter like they own the air, armored and loud, dragging swords behind them like promises. They don't see you, or if they do, they mistake you for smoke. You hand them cups of water when they grunt for it. You wipe their blades with rags that were never meant to be clean. They drop gold coins on your father's bench without looking, then ride off, cloaks flaring. You don't play at being them. You don't pick up sticks and gallop in the yard. You don't pretend. There's no space for fantasy when you're the one who sharpens their edges. You know what steel feels like. You know how hot it gets. You know how much it cuts. They may carry the weapons, but you make them. And deep down you already understand, without you, their glory is nothing. Your days lose names. You stop knowing which one is the Sabbath. You just wake, eat, and enter the forge. Morning starts with cold tools and colder water. By noon, your hands are scorched red. By evening, they barely move. You don't sit unless you're told to. You don't speak unless asked. You pump the bellows over and over, the rhythm carving into your spine. Your arms shake, but you keep going. If you stop, the fire dies. And if the fire dies, everyone notices. So you learn not to stop. You grind the edge of a blade until your wrist screams. You carry coal sacks too big for your back. You blow on embers when the wind isn't enough. Every action is absorbed, filed away, added to the slow, grinding list of things expected. There's no praise, no reward. Occasionally, your father glances at your work and grunts. That's approval. It might be the only one you ever get. And even then, it comes wrapped in soot and silence. At night, when your muscles twitch and your fingers burn, you lie awake in the corner of the forge and think. Not about escape. You're too young for rebellion. But you think about how long you'll do this, when you'll be big enough to swing the hammer properly, when the men in armor will know your name. Not because you fought beside them, that's not your place, but because their swords won't survive a battle without your hands behind them. You're 6. You don't know much. But you already know this. Your life won't be written in stories or songs. It will be felt in hinges that don't creak, in nails that don't snap, in weapons that don't fail. You're not learning a trade. You're becoming a shadow behind every strong thing that stands. And it starts now, before your bones are even finished growing, before your voice has stopped cracking. You are no longer a child. You are an apprentice. And from this day forward, the fire will shape you. Outside, the sun is warm for the first time in months. The frost has melted, the mud is soft, and you can hear laughter. Sharp, light bursts of it carried on the breeze. Children chase goats through the lanes, stumbling over their own feet, shrieking with joy as animals dart between fences and carts. Somewhere, someone's baking bread, and the scent drifts through the cracks in the forge wall like a cruel invitation. But you're not out there. You're inside. Barefoot on scorched stones. Your hands are black with soot. Your back is damp with sweat that keeps rising before it can dry. You grip the bellows handle with both hands and pull, over and over, a slow, dragging motion that makes your arms tremble and your fingers sting. Each pull breathes life into the flames. Each breath of fire eats more of you. You want to stop just for a moment, not to rest. Rest is too much to ask, but to feel something other than heat. You don't stop. Your father's voice cracks across the forge like a whip. He doesn't shout your name. He never does. He just bellows a word, short and sharp, and you understand. Stoke harder. The fire isn't angry enough yet. He's hammering something thick and uncooperative on the anvil, and the sparks aren't flying like they should. That means it's your fault. The bellows aren't working. You're not working, so you keep pulling. Slower now, not from laziness but from exhaustion. Your shoulders burn, your eyes water. The room shifts in waves of heat and smoke. You blink through them, trying to see the edges of things, trying to stay awake. You're too young to understand words like dizziness or dehydration. All you know is that everything aches, and the fire doesn't care. It always wants more. More air. More fuel, more of you. You grit your teeth and keep going. You can't hear the goats anymore. Just the hiss of the coals and your father's hammer keeping time like a war drum. Sometimes someone passes by. A neighbor, a passing tradesman, another child, and glances in. They don't stop. They don't ask if you're all right. They don't see you. They see the smoke, the sparks, the man at the anvil, the glowing iron, but not the boy in the corner feeding the fire like a living sacrifice. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to leave the bellows and run after the goats, just for a minute, to feel grass, not ash, beneath your feet, to chase something that isn't work. The hammer is too heavy for you, but you lift it anyway. You have to. No one's going to step in and say you're not ready. Readiness isn't a requirement here. Obedience is. You raise it high enough to feel your elbows shake, your shoulders strain, your back begin to twist under the weight. Then you swing. It lands soft, too soft. The metal barely shifts. No spark, no hiss. Just a dull clunk, like disappointment echoing through the forge. That's when he shouts. Not a word at first, just a sound. Harsh, sharp, loud enough to stop your heartbeat for a moment. Then come the words, angry and blunt, slicing through the smoke like the edge of a misused blade. Again, harder. What is that? You try again, rushing, panicked, and miss the angle. The iron jumps, spins, clatters off the anvil. He shouts again. This time it's louder. You flinch, not from pain but from shame. You want to disappear, but there's nowhere to go. The forge is small, and you are too visible to hide. You pick up the hammer. Again. Your hands shake. You can barely grip it. Not just from effort, but from the sting behind your eyes that you won't let turn into tears. Crying doesn't help here. It never did. You learned that the first time you dropped something hot and blistered your palm. No one ran to comfort you. No one lifted you from the floor. You just stood up, wiped your face on your sleeve, and kept going. Now you do the same. He's still talking, not yelling anymore. But it's worse now. Quiet words, sharp as nails, about how weak you are, how your sister could strike harder, how a tool that doesn't work belongs in the fire. You nod, not in agreement, just to show you heard. You swing again, still too soft. The rhythm isn't there, the confidence. You haven't found that place where muscle meets instinct. Not yet. Not today. And until you do, the yelling will continue. Other boys your age are still climbing trees and skinning their knees. They get scolded for muddy boots or breaking pots. Your scoldings are different. They echo. They linger. They're etched into you with every mistake. And the mistakes are many. You swing wrong. You grip wrong. You strike too high, then too low. You don't anticipate how the metal moves, how it resists, how it cools too fast when your hesitation lets it. The forge doesn't forgive hesitation, and neither does he. You wonder if he remembers being this small, if he ever swung too soft, if someone yelled at him, or if he was born with that voice all gravel and heat, forged the same way his tools were, through pressure and time. You never ask. You don't speak much anymore, not when it can be used against you. You watch, you listen, you swing, and you take the yelling like you take the heat, constant, expected, part of the job. Eventually, the words fade, but their shape stays inside you. They settle like soot in your lungs, coating everything. You keep working, quieter now, more careful. But the damage is already done. Not to the metal, to you. You've begun to carry yourself differently. You brace for shouts before they come. You stiffen when someone steps too close. You start to feel shame before you've done anything wrong. That's the worst part. The silence between strikes is filled with what-ifs and not-agains. But you keep going, because you have to. Because somewhere in this rhythm of mistakes and corrections, you believe there's a version of you who gets it right. A version who swings hard enough, true enough, who doesn't get yelled at, who doesn't flinch at words. You don't know if you'll ever become him, but you know you won't become anything else. So you lift the hammer again. One more try, one more bruise, one more step toward silence. It happens fast, faster than your eyes can track or your hands can pull away. One moment you're reaching for the tongs, and the next you're touching metal that isn't glowing anymore, but still holds the heat of fire. Your fingers connect, and for a split second, you feel nothing. Then everything. A white-hot sting shoots up your arm, sharp enough to steal your breath. You jerk back, drop whatever you were holding, and cradle your hand like something sacred and broken. Your skin blisters almost instantly, angry welts rising along the edge of your thumb and palm. You want to scream, but the air is thick with smoke and noise. The hammer is still striking. The fire is still burning. The voices are still shouting. No one sees. No one stops. You wait, holding your breath, expecting someone to notice, to ask, to care. They don't. Not because they're cruel, because this is normal. Burns happen. They're like splinters or bruises or missed meals, too common to mention. You don't cry, not because it doesn't hurt. It does, more than anything ever has, but because crying would be worse. Crying would mean attention, and attention might mean shame. You've seen how your father looks at tears, like they're a waste of heat. So you stay quiet, even as the pain pulses in time with your heartbeat. The smell reaches you next, not just smoke and soot, but something else. Something raw. Flesh. Yours. Burnt and curling under the pressure of its own ruin. It mixes with the usual scents of the forge, and for a moment, even that feels like it belongs. You're not separate from the forge now. You're part of it. Marked by it. Claimed. You wrap your hand in the edge of your sleeve and try to keep working. The cloth sticks. The blisters press and stretch. Every movement is a small betrayal. But you keep going, because you know what happens if you don't. The fire won't wait. The work won't stop. And the pain will still be there, whether you move or not. Later, you find a scrap of old linen and wrap your hand tighter. It's filthy, but it's all you have. You hold your wrist under the water bucket, not too long, just enough to stop the throbbing from making you faint. Your knees feel hollow, like they might give out. You sit, just for a moment, behind the forge where no one can see, and you breathe. Deep, slow, measured. The way your mother used to tell you to breathe through pain, not for comfort, but to keep your head clear. You count the seconds between pulses. You listen to the hammer strikes like a heartbeat that doesn't belong to you. You know the burn will scab over, peel, and scar. It won't heal clean. Nothing here does. Every scar is jagged, overlapping some older one. Your hands are a map of things you don't talk about. And now there's another line on that map. One you earned in silence. One no one else will ever know about. Not because it doesn't matter. Because it happens all the time. By the time someone finally glances at you, your father maybe, or one of the older apprentices, your sleeve is already stained. They don't say anything. Just a look like they're checking to see if you're still working. And you are. Barely. That's enough. You don't expect sympathy. You're not sure what it would even sound like. All you know is that this is how it goes. You burn yourself. You keep working. You get stronger, not because the fire made you strong, but because there's no other choice. Tomorrow, the blister will break. The skin will peel. The wound will tighten every time you grip the hammer. You'll grimace, maybe curse, but you won't stop. The forge won't allow it. And neither will you. Because now the burn is yours. A private hurt. A quiet badge. Not of honor. Not of pride. But of belonging. Of becoming. Of learning the hard way, which is the only way here. You sleep in the same room where the tools hang. Not by choice. There is no other room. Just the forge and the corner where a pile of straw pretends to be a bed. The walls are coated in soot that never wipes clean, and the air smells of oil, old leather, and smoke that clings to your lungs even in dreams. Above your head, Iron tools dangle from pegs driven into the beams. Hammers, tongs, files, chisels, all swaying gently when someone passes too close or the wind finds its way through a crack in the wood. They creak, they shift, sometimes they fall. Once a rusted awl landed inches from your cheek. You didn't tell anyone. You just rolled over, pressed your back to the wall, and pulled the scratchy blanket tighter around your legs. Sleep here is not rest. It's a brief surrender, a pause in the noise. But the noise never really ends. Even at night, the forge hums. Not from fire, the flames die down eventually, but from memory. The heat seeps from the stones slowly, long after the bellows have stopped. You feel it under your spine, radiating through the floorboards, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The tools above you aren't silent. They chime softly with each gust of wind or with the shifting of the building as it settles into its bones. You know them by sound. A rasp has a dry rattle. A hammer gives a deep metallic thud-thud. The thinner tools, punches, pegs, small tongs, almost whistle as they swing. At first it frightened you. The noises, the shadows, the sense that something was moving in the dark. But now it's familiar. Not comforting, but known. You've come to expect the tools to speak. Sometimes you think they breathe. Soft sighs, exhaled through rust and weight. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself you don't hear it. But when you close your eyes, they whisper anyway. The smell never leaves. Not the smell of your sweat, or your clothes, or the cot that was never really clean, but the deeper scent. Burnt wool, grease, blood sometimes. Ash always. It lives in your nose, and by now, you've forgotten what fresh air is supposed to feel like. You fall asleep inhaling smoke and wake up coughing it. No one says goodnight. No one tucks you in. You lie down when the work is done and get up when the light leaks through the roof. The others step over you in the morning like you're part of the floor, which in a way you are. One more thing the forge owns. One more shape in the shadows. Sometimes, in those rare moments before sleep takes you, you try to imagine what it would be like to sleep somewhere safe, with silence, with space. But the thought slips away quickly, like water through coal dust. You don't hold on to it. You know better. You belong here, among the iron, beneath the weight of tools that don't sleep. Dreams come, but they're never gentle. You dream of heat, of noise, of your father's voice booming through smoke. You dream of sparks landing on your skin, of tongs that bite, of nails that twist and turn and never lie straight. You dream of hammers swinging through air and missing, crashing through bone. You wake with your fingers clenched around nothing, your muscles twitching like they're still holding something hot. There's no comfort, no candle to keep the dark away, just the distant glow of dying embers and the shadows they throw against the wall, long, crooked shadows that stretch like arms reaching out. You lie still, staring upward at the rows of metal above you, listening to them sway and whisper and groan. You wonder if they remember the hands that used them. You wonder if they resent yours. But mostly, you wonder how long you'll sleep beneath them. How many more nights you'll spend here, wrapped in smoke and silence, before the forge finally stops asking for more, and whether it ever will. The food is always the same. Porridge, if it can be called that. A thick, beige mash of root vegetables, barley, and whatever scraps were left over from the day before. Sometimes it's warm, sometimes it isn't. You eat it squatting near the forge in the same corner, with the same dented bowl and a wooden spoon that's more splinter than utensil. There's no table, no cloth, no place set aside for rest. Eating is not a pause. It's a form of fueling, nothing more. You cradle the bowl in hands that are still raw from work, knuckles blackened, blisters pressed white where the rim touches your palm. You eat fast, not from hunger, but from necessity. If you linger, someone might call your name. Another task, another mistake, another burn. So you eat quickly, mouthful after mouthful, swallowing without chewing, without noticing, without tasting. The heat from the bowl is the only warmth in your fingers, but it doesn't last. The forge heat only licks the skin. It doesn't settle in your bones. Your hands are always cold now, cracked from ash, stiff from hammerings, trembling even when still. And when you eat, you try to ignore the way the spoon trembles as you raise it. No one comments on it. No one asks why. They all eat the same way. Back hunched, eyes lowered, food tilted into their mouths as if conversation is a luxury none of you can afford. You've learned to eat with silence, with focus, with your ears tuned to the sound of boots or tools being lifted. You don't relax, you don't savor. Food is something to get through. You barely notice its taste anymore. Bland, bitter, burnt. It all becomes the same after long enough. You used to care. Now you care only that it stays down and doesn't make you slower. Sometimes there's meat, usually stringy, salted beyond recognition, or from an animal no one names. On good days there's bread. Hard, dark, stale, but it gives your jaw something to grind against, and that almost feels like satisfaction. On rare occasions, someone shares a bit of fruit, dried apple, a slice of something preserved from last harvest. That taste lingers, not because it's sweet, but because it doesn't belong. It's too alive, too full of the world outside the forge. It reminds you of color, of sun, of something better. So you try not to crave it. Craving is dangerous here. Craving means remembering that food could be more than this. It could be celebration, comfort, joy. But not here. Not for you. For you, food is fuel, calories to keep the hammer swinging, bulk to keep your legs from giving out, warmth to push the cold back just a little. You don't count the days, but you can count the bowls. They're all the same. Same size, same cracks, same dull echo when set down on stone. You finish fast, wipe your mouth with your sleeve, and stand before anyone asks if you're done. You leave the bowl on the shelf, the spoon inside, and return to your work like you never left it. The forge doesn't notice you ate. It doesn't care. And neither does anyone else. Meals pass through you like smoke through rafters. There, then gone, leaving only a trace. You don't remember your last meal, and you won't remember the next. You've trained yourself to forget taste, to ignore hunger unless it's screaming, to accept that fullness is not the goal. Endurance is. And in this place, endurance is everything. You've learned to eat with cold hands and a burning back, with smoke in your eyes and metal on your breath. You've learned to chew without tasting and to swallow without thinking. Because food here isn't life. It's duty. It's discipline. And like everything else in the forge, It comes without kindness, without pause, without flavor. It doesn't start as something grand, just a piece of scrap iron, crooked at one end, bent from another boy's failed attempt. Your father tosses it aside, uninterested, and you pick it up later when no one's watching. It's small, almost nothing, too thin for a hinge, too short for a blade. But it feels right in your palm, like it's asking to be something. So you sneak it into the coals when the fire is already full, burying it like a secret. You wait longer than needed, your eyes darting to make sure no one sees. When it glows the dull orange of readiness, you grip it with the tongs and place it on the anvil. The hammer in your hand feels heavier than usual, not because of its weight, but because this time, it's yours. No one's guiding you. No one's shouting. You lift it, pause, and strike. It takes longer than it should. Your strikes are uneven, the rhythm off. The iron resists, twisting the wrong way, folding where it should flatten. You press on anyway, trying to remember how the older apprentices do it. The angle of the blow, the roll of the wrist, the way they turn the metal without thinking. You're not there yet, not even close. But for once, the failure is your own. Not someone else's command, not a rushed task or a misheard instruction. This is your mistake to make, and it feels different, honest. The iron curls at the end, more by accident than design. You strike again to correct it, but instead it bends awkwardly, forming a sharp, jagged elbow that you don't know how to fix. Your grip slips, the hammer lands crooked. The nail, poisson, if that's even what it is, jumps and skids to the edge of the anvil. You catch it, barely. Your hand sings with pain, but you don't stop. You breathe. You press it flat again. You keep going until it cools. When it's done, you stare at it for a long time. It's ugly, misshapen, useless probably. No cartwheel will hold with that thing. No barrel lid will stay fastened. It's a nail in name only. And yet, it's the first thing you've ever made. Not assisted, not held in place for someone else. Made, start to finish, forged in secret, with quiet urgency and your own stubborn heat. You don't show it to anyone. Not because they'd mock it, though they might, but because it isn't for them. It's for you. A mark, a milestone, proof that your hands can shape things too, that you're not just a pair of legs to carry water or arms to pump bellows. You can make, even if it's crooked, even if no one ever uses it. You wrap it in a bit of cloth and hide it beneath your bedding, between the straw and the cold stone wall. You check on it at night, just to know it's still there. Still yours. Days go on. Work continues. The others don't notice a difference, but you carry that nail in your thoughts like a spark that hasn't gone out. When the hammer feels too heavy, you remember how it felt in your hand. When the shouting gets too loud, you think about the silence around your first strike. When your arms ache from bellows and your back folds under the weight of coal sacks, you remind yourself, you made something. Not something beautiful, not something right, but something real. And that's more than you had before. You wonder when you'll be allowed to make again. Out in the open, with permission. Maybe years from now, maybe never. But for now, you have that one crooked nail, that first mistake, that first miracle. And even though it bends the wrong way and could never hold wood or stone together, it holds you. Just enough, just barely, but it holds. You don't notice it at first. Not really. The change creeps in slow, like the way soot gathers in the corners, or how the stones of the forge grow warm and stay warm without you realizing it. One day, a sleeve doesn't fit the way it used to. Another day, you catch your reflection in the surface of a water trough, and your arm looks different. Not larger, not impressive, just more defined. Sinew where there was once softness. A bend at the elbow that stays tense even when you're at rest. Your wrists thicken. Not dramatically. Not like the older men whose arms seem like they belong to another species. But enough that you stop looking like a child. Enough that when you lift the hammer, it no longer fights you the same way. The tool still pulls at your shoulder, still demands balance, but your body no longer protests quite so loudly. Instead, it responds with quiet resignation. The muscles grow dense, packed in layers you didn't ask for. There's no symmetry. One side bulks from pumping the bellows. The other stiffens from steady blows. Your fingers become rough, not just on the skin, but in the way they move, a stiffness that doesn't go away, even when you're not holding anything. When you try to stretch them, they tremble slightly, like they've forgotten how to relax. You catch your forearm against the edge of the anvil one evening, and it doesn't bleed. The skin splits, shallow and dry, like bark, and it takes effort to remember that you should care. You bandage it, eventually, but not because it hurts, just because the blood was getting on the tools. Your arms no longer belong entirely to you. They belong to the forge, to the rhythm, to the need. And in return, they grant you just enough strength to keep up. Just enough resilience to not fall behind. Not yet. There's no pride in it. No one comments. No one praises your progress or notes the way you've stopped stumbling with the coal buckets, or how the hammer now rests easier in your hand. It's just expected. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to adapt. You're a tool in training, same as the ones hanging on the wall. And like those tools, you start to look the part. Hardened, burnished, slightly misshapen. When you stand in the doorway, arms crossed from habit more than posture, you notice they hang at odd angles now. A curve in one shoulder, a twist in the other. You're not built for beauty. You're being carved by repetition. Each swing etches a line into you. Each lift of the bellows carves a notch. The symmetry of your body is gone, replaced by usefulness. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You glance at the hammers, their chipped edges, their smoothed handles. You see yourself in them, not strong, just used. At night, your arms ache. Deep, constant aches that pulse even when you lie still. You've stopped expecting rest to help. Sleep comes, but it brings no relief, just more weight, more soreness. You press your forearms against the cool stone wall beside your straw bedding, hoping the chill will numb them. It doesn't. It just reminds you that the ache is real, that it lives under your skin now. Some mornings your hands don't want to open. They curl in your sleep and refuse to straighten. You soak them in warm water, stretch your fingers against the table, and wait. Eventually, they obey. Enough to hold the hammer, enough to keep working. That's what matters. Not how it feels, not how it looks. What matters is that your arms now match the tools, not because they were meant to, Because they had to. Because the forge doesn't care for beauty, only for function. And now, so do you. It comes without warning. You're sweeping the floor, gathering shards of slag and ash into the corner, when a man walks in. Broad shoulders, thick boots, eyes that scan the room like he's looking for something beneath the surface. He doesn't speak at first, just holds out a short length of iron and a coin. He doesn't say your name. You're not even sure he knows it. He simply places the coin on the edge of the anvil, not in your hand, not into the till, and says, "Make it straight." 2 holes, 1 at each end. Then he turns and leaves. No nod, no thanks. Just his back disappearing through the door before you can say anything. You stand still for a moment, broom in hand, uncertain if this is real, if the order was meant for you. But no one else is around. The forge is quiet except for the settling of coals. The coin is still there, small, tarnished, heavy in its implication. You hold the iron in your hands like it might break. It's nothing special. A support bar for a cart, probably, or part of a gate brace. You've seen others make them 100 times. You've watched how they heat it, shape it, punch the holes clean through with a twist and drive. You know the motions. But knowing isn't doing. And this time, there's no one beside you, no voice correcting your grip, no hand adjusting your angle. Just you, the iron, the fire, and the coin, which you leave exactly where it was placed, as if touching it too soon might undo whatever permission it represents. You light the coals slowly, methodically, not rushing even though your fingers tremble. When the bar begins to glow, you feel your breath catch. This is it. This is real. You center it on the anvil, raise the hammer, and begin. The first few strikes are too light, then too hard. The metal doesn't move how you want it to. It resists in all the wrong places. Your arms remember the rhythm eventually, but your heart keeps beating too fast, as if afraid of being caught. Even though this time you're not sneaking. You check and recheck the shape. You file down one end, then hesitate before marking for the holes. Punching them wrong means starting over, and you have no more scrap. You use a spike to mark the points, lining them up carefully by eye, measuring the distance with your thumb. When you finally drive the punch through, the clang reverberates up your arm like a signal bell. It takes longer than it should. You have to reheat twice. Your fingers blister from holding the tongs too tight. But in the end, there it is. A straight bar, 2 clean holes, edges filed, blackened and ugly, but solid. You set it on the same anvil where he left the coin and wait. No one tells you when he'll come back. You go back to sweeping, to bellows, to hauling coal. Hours pass. Maybe more. And then the door creaks again, and he's there, just as suddenly as before. He picks up the piece without a word, turns it in his hand, checks the holes. No inspection, no test, just a glance. Then he pockets the metal and walks out. He doesn't speak to you, doesn't ask your name, doesn't nod or frown. The coin is gone. Taken, as if it never mattered. And maybe it didn't. Maybe this was just another errand to him. But not to you. You stare at the empty space where the bar had rested. You remember every step, every blow, every decision you made alone. No one praised it. No one mocked it. It simply was. You made something, and someone paid for it. And for now, that's enough. Not joy, not pride, just the knowledge that your work, however quiet, however plain, left this place and entered the world, and that maybe one day it will be back. It was early, just after dawn, when the cart broke a wheel on the road outside the forge. You were alone, tending to the fire, scraping ash into buckets, when the knock came, sharp and urgent. A traveler, mud on his boots, a rush in his voice, a glint in his eyes that said he didn't want to linger in this village longer than necessary. You stepped outside to see the damage, your apron still smeared with soot, hands already burning from yesterday's work. The wheel wasn't shattered, just split along the rim. The iron brace had snapped. A clean fix. 30 minutes, maybe less. He offered no name, just silver, already held out in a closed fist. You nodded and took it wordlessly. While you worked, he stood off to the side, pacing, stretching his back, scanning the path behind him, like he expected something, or someone, to appear. You didn't ask. You never ask. But you watched. Not just the cart, not just the cracked iron and the wood that needed bolting. You watched him, his pack, his boots, the way he scanned the trees, the way he kept one hand tucked near his belt, where a blade might sit. He was from elsewhere. You could tell from the way he looked at the village, like it was a place to pass through, not to live in. You could smell the road on him, that mix of sweat and freedom and the faint tang of uncertainty. And for the first time in a long while, the thought formed clearly in your mind. You could go. You could drop the hammer, follow the road, and not come back. Just step into the trees behind him. Say nothing. Take nothing. Just leave. No one would stop you. Not today, not with your father at the market, not with the others sleeping off last night's drink. No one would even notice until you were gone. You paused with the half-shaped brace in your tongs, turning it over slowly above the flame, pretending to study the curve, but really just thinking. The thought grew roots fast. What would it be like to walk without tools in your hands? To feel the wind on your face without it bringing smoke or soot? To sleep without iron above your head? The idea tasted strange, sweet, but sharp. You glanced again at the road. The man hadn't noticed. He was crouched now, adjusting the straps on his pack. You could do it. Step away. Drop the brace into the trough. Let the sizzle mark your departure. Say nothing. Just walk. There was space on that cart. Not much, but enough. And he didn't seem the type to ask questions. You looked at your hands, at the soot etched into your skin, the burn on your wrist that hadn't healed right. You looked at the brace. Almost done. Almost ready. And then, without knowing why, you turned back to the anvil. You finished the piece, filed the edges, punched the holes, fit it snug into place beneath the wheel. The man thanked you, briefly, and tossed an extra coin your way. Then he left. Just like that. Dust kicked up by the wheels. No backward glance, no trace. And you stood there, staring down the road, your body still humming with the heat of the forge. But something else now, something colder. The moment had passed. You could have left. You could have followed. You could have started over. But instead, you stayed. You told yourself it was because someone needed to fix the wheel, because there was still work to do, because the fire had already been lit. But deep down, you knew better. You stayed because it was what you'd always done. Because leaving wasn't just stepping outside the village. It was stepping away from the only thing you knew, the only thing you were becoming. And maybe, just maybe, you weren't ready to give that up. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The calendar was never yours. It belonged to priests and scribes and merchants who marked days with ink and sermons and tally sticks. In the forge, time is measured by fire, not by dates. You stopped counting winters years ago. You don't know if it's the third or the fourth since your voice deepened, or if you're closer to 20 or past it. No one tells you, and no one seems to care. What matters is heat, whether it clings to the skin or hides in the walls, whether the coals need coaxing or simply obey. There are only two kinds of days here, those where the fire fights back and those where it disappears too quickly. You've learned to listen to the sound the bellows make, how in cold months they wheeze like tired lungs, and in the warm ones they roar with frightening ease. That's your calendar now, not spring, not autumn, just ease or effort, sweat or shiver. Outside you catch glimpses of change, the color of the mud, the way light shifts through the cracks in the shutters. Children appear barefoot for a few weeks before boots return. Once in a while someone mentions harvest or planting, or the first frost. But those words don't land. They float past you like another language. You nod, but your hands are already back to work. You know when the hammer slips more easily because of sweat, and when your fingers move slower because they're stiff from the cold. That's how you track time. Not with names, not with festivals, not with the smell of flowers or the fall of leaves, only with tools and aches, and the way your shirt clings or cracks when it dries too close to the flame. There's a rhythm, yes, but it isn't tied to seasons. It's tied to survival, to repetition, to the demands of iron that don't care whether the birds are singing or the ground is frozen. You remember vaguely when the words still mattered, when you would step outside and someone would say, spring, and that would mean something, newness, maybe, or freedom. When autumn meant gathering, and winter meant huddling close to the hearth. But those meanings faded. They don't hold in the forge. Here, spring just means more work, broken tools from planting. Summer means exhaustion, bellows that demand twice the effort to feed the fire. Autumn is blades and hinges for carts. And winter? Winter is simply colder metal and stiffer joints. The words haven't disappeared completely. You still hear them sometimes, but they feel like decorations. Ornamental things for people who have time to notice, time to care. You don't. You haven't for years. Not since the forge became the only place where your breath mattered. Not since the fire became the only thing that greeted you every morning. Once, during a rare moment of idleness, a traveling friar asked you what your favorite season was. You blinked at him, genuinely confused. He smiled, waiting, thinking it was a game. You didn't answer. Not because you were rude, but because the question didn't make sense anymore. You shrugged and said, "The one where the iron listens." He laughed, patted your shoulder, and walked on, probably thinking you were being clever. But you weren't. You meant it. That's all there is. Days when the work fights you. Days when it doesn't. The sky can be blue or gray, the trees bare or full. It doesn't change what you have to do. And so the seasons blur, not out of negligence, but because they never truly mattered here. You wake, you work, you sleep. The world outside the forge shifts and blooms and dies and returns. but you don't follow it. You don't track it. You just keep the fire alive, no matter what name the world gives to the day. It isn't announced. No ceremony, no nod of approval, no moment where someone says, "It's yours now." One morning, you come in early, earlier than usual, and find that the corner bench has been cleared. The scraps that used to pile there are gone. The bent tongs that no one bothered to fix have been relocated. In their place, space, empty, waiting space. Your father doesn't look up when you notice. He's hammering something thick and loud into shape, his rhythm unbroken. You stand there for a moment, broom still in hand, unsure. It feels like a test or a mistake, but nothing is said. And when you finally step toward it, your steps are slow, quiet, as if afraid that taking it too fast might revoke the moment. There is no sign, no boundary, nothing carved in wood. Just space, yours now. Not a reward, a burden. It's not the best spot. The wall is cracked behind it, and the draft creeps in during the cold months. The coals take longer to hold heat here. You have to share the quench barrel with 2 others. But it's yours, which means no one will tell you when to sweep it. No one will reset your tools. No one will check your work before it cools. You learn that quickly, painfully in some cases. The first hinge you shape here warps in the middle. You tried to work too fast, afraid someone would step in, take the hammer, and say, "Not yet." But no one did. No one stopped you. They just let you fail, quietly, then expected you to fix it. You did. It took most of the day. Your arms ached, your palms blistered in new places. But by sunset, it fit. Not well, not beautifully, but it worked. And no one said a word. Just a passing grunt from the journeyman who picked it up and walked out. You stayed behind, brushing ash from your bench, trying not to smile. Having your own corner doesn't mean freedom. It means responsibility. You notice that fast. The orders come without instruction now. 5 nails barrel-sized. 2 latches, nothing fancy. Hinge, big one. You're expected to know, to guess, to remember how the last one was made, and to do it better this time. When something breaks, it's your fault. When something's late, it's your delay. You start to keep mental tallies. Who needs what? When they came? What shape they prefer for their wagon joints? No one teaches you how to do that. You just absorb it. Like smoke in your clothes. Like calluses on your hands. And the others don't step in anymore. If your fire dies, you relight it. If your tools go dull, you sharpen them. No excuses, no guidance, just quiet expectation. You asked for this, even if you didn't say it out loud. You earned it, even if no one handed you the keys. And now, it's yours. The space, the pressure, the weight. At night, when the forge is empty and the last embers crackle low, you sometimes sit on your bench a little longer. Not because you're proud, not exactly, but because there's something about the quiet that feels earned. This spot was shaped by others before you. You can see the notches in the wood where someone used to rest their hammer, the soot stains that don't match your hands. You wonder who stood here 20 years ago. You wonder if someone will stand here 20 years from now. You don't know how long you'll last. If this is the start of something larger, or just a place you'll slowly sink into. But for now, the space is yours, not as a gift, as a sentence, as a truth. You're no longer just part of the forge. You are a piece of it. And from now on, if anything breaks, it breaks with your name in the cracks. At first, you think he's just tired. A longer pause before he answers. A grunt instead of words. A nod where there used to be instruction. You don't question it. Everyone has hard days in the forge, but the silence doesn't pass. It stretches, thickens, settles into the corners like soot. You wait for a correction that never comes. You drive a rivet too shallow, glance up, expecting a barked command or a sigh. But nothing. He just keeps working, eyes fixed on his own flame, as if your mistake isn't worth the energy of his voice. You finish the rivet again, better this time, and still, silence. No nod, no approval, just the clink of tools and the hush of the bellows. At some point, you realize it isn't fatigue. It's distance. Chosen, deliberate distance. He is done teaching. Or perhaps he believes there is nothing left to teach. Either way, the weight shifts, and now it's on you. He doesn't watch your work anymore. He doesn't glance at your fire to see if it's holding. He doesn't offer scraps of advice between orders. You remember how, years ago, he used to place his hand over yours to adjust the hammer angle, rough palm guiding yours like a mold. Now, if you strike wrong, the metal bends and stays bent. If you forge a blade too brittle, it snaps in the quench, and the loss is yours to carry. No reprimand, no lecture, just the task again, and the silence between you. It's not cruel. It's not even cold. It's indifferent. He has stepped back not out of malice, but because he expects, no, demands, that you step forward. There is no test, no final lesson, just absence. The forge hasn't changed, but the way it echoes has. You now hear your own breath in the quiet, your own muttered curses, and his silence becomes louder than any voice ever was. You catch yourself looking to him anyway. Old reflexes. He'll be turning a blade, and you'll pause, waiting for the rhythm of his hammer to tell you when to begin yours. He doesn't notice, or pretends not to. You ask questions sometimes, out of habit, or panic, or both. And he answers, if he answers at all, with a wordless gesture, a flick of the wrist, a glance. The message is clear. You should already know. You've been watching long enough. You've been working long enough. If you don't understand now, maybe you never will. And when you do get something right, when the grain flows clean in the metal, when the haft sets without splinters, there's no praise, just the continuation of sound, as if correctness is expected, as if the absence of mistake is the reward. You miss the guidance even though you resented it. You miss the certainty of being told, even though you longed to decide. And now you have what you wanted, and it's quiet. At night, when the work is done, he eats in silence too. You sit across from him sometimes, chewing the same stew, feeling the same burn in your arms. And you wonder if this is what becoming a man is. Not a celebration, not a title, but this, a slow unraveling of support, a handing over of responsibility without ceremony. He doesn't ask about your day, doesn't tell you stories anymore. The space between you used to be filled with instruction. Now it's just space. Still, you don't feel abandoned. You feel initiated. Like you've been led into a truth. That real knowledge isn't passed down through words, but through mistakes, through repetition, through silence. He has given you that silence as a gift, or maybe as a tool. It carves you now in places no hammer can reach, and though you sometimes hate it, sometimes wish for just one word, one look of approval, you keep going. Because now, it's your turn to become the silence for someone else. Someday. There is no moment, no torch passed, no name etched into a beam, no clink of a cup to mark a new beginning. One day, your father simply doesn't come in before sunrise. You assume he's late. You light the fire, stoke the coals, and set out the tools. You begin shaping the nails that were promised to the cooper 2 days ago. When he still hasn't arrived by midday, you hammer harder, hoping the noise will draw him in from wherever he's brooding. When dusk comes and he's still not there, you bank the fire yourself, sweep the ash yourself, and make a note of what's cooling too fast. The next morning, he's not there again, and again the next. Then one day you realize it's been weeks. He didn't leave. He's just stepped back. And you've stepped forward, not because you asked to, but because someone had to. No one tells you you're in charge. Not the apprentices who glance at you now when something breaks. Not the tanner who comes to argue about a rivet being crooked. Not the baker who brings bread instead of coin and assumes you'll know how much it's worth. But you are in charge now, and the world has decided this without asking. Orders are placed to you. Questions come to you. The others mimic your pace, your rhythm. When someone makes a mistake, they look at your face to see if it's been noticed. You don't remember when they started doing that. You don't remember when your father began standing in the doorway instead of at the anvil. You don't remember the last time he raised his voice. The forge is still full of sound, metal, fire, breath, but his voice has been gone from it for longer than you realized, and you didn't notice until it no longer mattered. Taking over isn't a triumph. It's a shift. Invisible. Relentless. You work more, not less. Your hands are never clean. Your sleep is never deep. You are the one who answers the knock at dawn and the knock at dusk. You are the one who says no when the villagers ask for work you know won't last, or for payment you know won't feed your crew. You are the one who must smile without warmth when a noble's servant demands haste, and the one who fixes the hinge again when the carpenter says it creaks. You used to wonder how your father managed it all. Now you don't. You know, he didn't. He endured it. The forge isn't a crown, it's a collar, and you wear it now, not proudly, not bitterly, just constantly. Because if you don't, everything stops. And stopping is not an option. Not when there's still iron to shape and mouths to feed. And yet, there are moments, fleeting ones, where you catch something else. A hint of pride in an apprentice's eyes when you praise their work. A glance from your father, quick and quiet, as he watches you without stepping in. A day where the orders line up perfectly, and every hinge fits without correction. On those days, you feel something settle in your chest. Not joy, but certainty. That this is yours now. Not because you claimed it, but because you became it. The forge isn't separate from you anymore. It's your breath, your rhythm, your name written in heat and soot and repetition. You didn't inherit it. You didn't seize it. You grew into it. Day by day, burn by burn, until one morning you looked around and realized that no one else was holding the hammer, and you were already swinging. They come at all hours, with hinges that groan, latches that stick, pots with hairline cracks. They come with tools whose handles have split, wheels whose rims won't hold, plows bent just slightly off and demanding weeks of correction. And you fix them. Not because you must, not because anyone commands it, but because if you don't, nothing else works. The village hums around its forge like bees to their queen, though no one would say that aloud, and certainly not to you. You aren't important in name. You aren't honored in song. But everything depends on you. The barns stay closed because your iron keeps them latched. The carts make it to market because your nails keep them upright. The doorways remain standing because your brackets hold. Piece by piece, shape by shape, the life of everyone else flows through your hands, and you make it last a little longer. They don't thank you. Not truly. Some nod. Some leave bread. Some over-explain as if their stories justify their broken things. But few look you in the eye when they hand you their burdens. It's not cruelty, it's habit. You are not a man to them. You are a solution, a fixture, as solid and expected as the church bell or the market square. You stand where you always have, and they bring what is broken to be mended. Not just objects. Sometimes, in the silence of the forge, they let slip things heavier than metal. A widow tells you she cannot open the shutters since her son left. A farmer confesses he struck his ox in anger. A girl offers a bent ring and says nothing of the boy who gave it. They don't ask for advice, they just need something to be fixed. And you do, quietly, carefully, one nail, one clasp, one blade at a time. You carry their failures without ever being asked to. The irony is not lost on you. Everything in your own life leans just slightly. Your stool wobbles from a cracked leg you never repaired. Your own boots are stitched with copper wire instead of leather. The door to your living quarters sticks, but you don't fix them. You never have time. Or maybe you don't see the point. When you spend your days repairing the world for others, your own comfort feels like indulgence. So you make do. You patch. You prop. You work. There is no one asking how your wrist holds up after the third blade. No one wondering if your lungs burn from years of smoke. You wake, you hammer, you quench, you repeat. The village turns, and you keep it turning, not with grand gestures, but with small, unseen acts of maintenance. A nail here, a washer there, a quiet nod when a child comes to fetch something sharp for their father. You are the thread no one notices until it snaps. And yet, there is pride, quiet, unspoken pride, in the accumulation of it all. You walk down the road and know every creak that doesn't happen because of your work, every gate that closes with ease, every wagon that rattles less than it did last season, every scythe that cuts clean. Your handprints are everywhere, though no one sees them. You don't need them to. The work is the proof. The world does not thank its bones, but it leans on them all the same. And you, hunched, burned, rarely spoken to, are one of those bones, holding weight, bearing strain, invisible but essential. It isn't glory, it isn't fame, but it is purpose. And as long as they keep coming, with their broken things, their tired voices, their quiet requests, you will keep answering. Not because they deserve it, not because you are asked, but because someone has to, and that someone has always, quietly, been you. War never announces itself with drums in your world. You don't hear the speeches, the proclamations, the riding of messengers. You hear it in coin. A pouch heavier than usual lands on your bench. tossed by a man who doesn't remove his gloves. He doesn't say where he's from or what it's for, only what's needed. Nails, blades, horseshoes, repairs. All of it fast, all of it yesterday. You don't ask, you never ask. And when you glance down at the coins, stacked and honest, you realize the truth. War has come again. Not to your doorstep, not yet, but close enough to stir the forges, close enough to make your stomach fuller than it has been in seasons. War is terrible, that's what they say. But for men like you, it is also profitable. Blood may flow somewhere far off, but here the fires burn hotter, longer, richer. You don't see soldiers, not at first. You see their errand boys, then their horses, then the iron they leave behind, bent and worn and split. They come with weapons that need sharpening, armor that won't close, buckles that crack, helmets dented on one side. You learn the shape of panic by how fast they speak. You learn how real the threat is by the thickness of the steel they ask you to rework. You don't ask about the battles. You don't need to. You see them in the wear and tear, in the blood crusted into hilts, in the dents too deep to buff out. And as you hammer, twist, and reforge, you wonder, idly, if this is the same iron you shaped seasons ago, now returned to you after a journey through hell. There is something haunting in that. The metal carries memory, even if the men who wore it do not return. The food is better during these times. The bakers trade bread without complaint. The butchers leave extra cuts. Even the tavern keeper nods when you pass. Everyone knows, if the blacksmith falters, the defense collapses. And so you eat. Meat, sometimes. Stew with actual thickness. Bread not yet stale. Your stomach forgets the ache of hunger for now. Your arms grow heavier with the hours, but so do your pockets. You don't celebrate it. You don't feel pride. You feel motion, unstoppable, unthinking motion. Orders pile on your bench before you've finished the last. Smoke clings to everything. Your apprentices fall asleep sitting up. You lose track of days. But there's no time to complain. The clink of coin keeps you moving. War feeds you in its own cruel way. And still, you don't forget what it means. Every blade you sharpen might end a life. Every horseshoe might carry someone toward death. You know this. You always have. But there is no room for guilt here. The forge doesn't care for questions. It cares for fire and muscle and rhythm. If you stop to mourn every man who might fall by your steel, your hands would never lift the hammer. And so, like those who fight, you learn to separate. You don't make weapons, you make tools. Someone else decides how they're used. And when the day ends, when your belly is full and your bench is clear, you sit in the dark and wonder if the world will ever be quiet again. But the answer is already clear. As long as there is iron, there will be war. And as long as there is war, they will come to you, not because you believe in it, but because you make it possible. At first, you tell yourself it's a blessing. The noise fades. The pace slows. The forge cools just enough that you don't sweat through your tunic before midday. There are no more strangers with dark eyes and blood-flecked boots demanding haste. The village exhales. Chickens roam again where the soldiers' horses trampled the earth. Children play in the streets instead of watching their fathers leave. For the first time in seasons, there is stillness, and it feels wrong. You wait for the next order, but it doesn't come. You wait for the next bag of coin, but the bench stays empty. You look around and realize there's nothing left to sharpen. No armor to patch, no blades to mend. Peace, once a prayer, has finally arrived, and it's starving you slowly. The requests return, but they're smaller now. A lock here, a gate hinge there, a broken pot from a careless step. People no longer bring their worries to your bench with urgency. They bring them with excuses. They ask if they can pay you later. They bring eggs instead of silver, onions instead of coin. You nod. You always nod. Because what else can you do? You can't eat iron. You can't warm yourself with skill alone. When the soldiers left, they took your livelihood with them. No one says it aloud, but you see it in their eyes. They no longer need you the way they did. You're no longer the man who keeps the kingdom standing. You're just the man who fixes what breaks. And now, less is breaking. You try to be grateful. You really do. The world is quieter. Fewer funerals, fewer tears. You pass by homes where children are laughing instead of waiting. You see old men resting in sunlit doorways. The village is healing. But you are drifting. Your hands, made for motion, now sit idle more than they should. Your fire burns less often, and when it does, it burns low. At night, you lie awake hearing the stillness like an accusation. You remember the fullness of your table during the worst of the battles, and you hate that memory. You hate that it felt like success. You hate that peace feels like failure. You tell yourself that it will pass, that life will return to balance. But deep down, you know the truth. You don't dream of peace anymore. You fear it. Because peace means forgetting. And in the quiet, you are the first to be forgotten. There's a particular cruelty in the way the world moves on without you. Tools rust before they're brought to you. Locks go unfixed because people learn to live without latching. They barter with neighbors instead of coming to your forge. They say things like next week and maybe later, and what they mean is not now, and eventually, never. You've become a luxury in a time of rest. The very hands that once saved them are now too costly to employ. And so you sit, sometimes, on the edge of your stool, staring at a cooling anvil, wondering if this is what you wished for. A world that doesn't need you. A world that works without fire. You dreamed of peace like it was salvation. Now you see it for what it is. Absence. Not just of war, but of purpose, of motion, of need. And you would never say it aloud, not even to yourself, but in the quiet of your chest. You almost wish for a knock at the door. Heavy, desperate, full of coin, full of something to do. He shows up with soot on his face and a tunic 2 sizes too big. He doesn't knock, just stands in the doorway, squinting into the smoke, waiting for you to see him. When you do, he doesn't speak right away, just holds out a bundle, a satchel, a crust of bread, and something tied in cloth that clinks like coins but feels too light to be worth much. He says his name like it's a question, offers no story, no references, just says he wants to learn. You don't say yes. You just turn back to the fire and hear the creak of the floorboards as he steps inside. That's how it starts. Not with ceremony, with silence. A boy too thin to swing a hammer properly, too clumsy to hold tongs straight. But he watches, and he stays. That's more than most. The first week, he drops things, nearly burns himself 3 times, forgets to stoke the coals, then overdoes it. You don't yell, You don't need to. Your silence is heavy enough to bend iron. He flinches at it. He tries harder. His hands blister. You give him no praise, just more tasks. He reminds you of yourself, too much. You see your younger arms in his trembling grip. You see your own confusion in the way he watches the tools hang from the wall like they might speak to him. You never asked to become a teacher, but the world doesn't ask what you want. It gives you a boy and tells you to pass something on, even if you don't know what that something is yet. You show him how to breathe near fire, how to hold weight low, how to listen to metal, not just hit it. He begins to understand the rhythm, slowly, imperfectly. He starts putting tools back in the right place. He starts waking before you do. You catch him once practicing a swing alone, mimicking your posture. It's awkward. It's wrong. But it's effort. You don't correct him. Not yet. He needs to want it first. He needs to find the pace on his own. You leave extra tasks where he can see them. A blade that needs oil, a hinge to be filed, and wait to see if he notices. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he doesn't. But each time he tries, something shifts. The forge feels less hollow. The days feel less still. You're not alone anymore. Not really. And it's strange how quickly that becomes a comfort. He asks you once if he's doing well. The question lingers in the smoke. You think about all the times you wanted to ask the same thing, all the times you never did. You don't answer right away. You hand him a bent nail and say, "Fix it." That's all. He takes it like it's a lesson, not a dismissal. And maybe it is. Maybe that's the most honest reply you can give. He's still weak, still unskilled, but he shows up. And in this place, showing up means everything. You didn't choose to be a mentor, but now you are. And if you do it right, if you pass on more than technique, maybe when your hands finally give out, the forge won't go cold. Maybe it will keep breathing through someone else. Maybe it already has. It happens before you know it. One moment, he's fumbling with the tongs, holding them too close to the flame, letting the iron sag instead of holding its shape. And the next, your voice breaks through the forge like a hammer on glass. Loud, sharp, final. He freezes, eyes wide, like a deer caught in firelight. Your words echo, no? Not just in the air, but in your chest. You didn't mean to shout. You didn't plan it. It just came out. Like heat rising off metal, like breath after being held too long. You see his hands tremble. You see the way he steps back, not out of defiance, but out of something older, something you recognize in your bones. That same fear that once lived in you, passed down like a tool, like a scar. You want to take it back, but you don't. You don't know how. The rest of the day passes without words. He moves quieter, keeps his head low, does what he's told, but not with the same rhythm, not with the same hunger. And you feel it. That space between you growing wider with every swing. Not because of what he did, but because of what you said, or how you said it. The forge is loud, always loud, but today the silence between sounds is louder. You hear your own father's voice in your throat. The same sharp edge, the same roughness. He shouted too. You thought it made you stronger. Maybe it did. Or maybe it just made you hard. You wonder now if there's a difference. You remember how many days you worked with your chest knotted, not from failure, but from fear. And you realize you've given that same knot to someone else. Later, he asks if he should leave, quietly, eyes on the floor, like he's not sure if he's even allowed to ask, like he's expecting you to say yes. And part of you almost does, not out of anger, but out of shame. You feel like you've failed him, like whatever you were supposed to teach has already been broken. But you don't say yes. You just say no, short and flat. Then you turn back to the anvil. It's not enough. He stays, but not because you've healed anything. He stays because leaving feels worse. And that's the part that cuts deepest. He's not here out of pride or loyalty. He's here because he doesn't know where else to go. Just like you once were. Just like maybe everyone is in the end. That night, you sit with your back to the wall, the forge finally cool, your fingers stiff from too many years of gripping steel. You stare at the hammer in your lap and realize you've never taught him the most important thing, how not to become you. You can teach him to temper iron, to read the glow, to hear the ring of a blade well forged. But can you teach him to speak without fear, to lead without shouting? Can you undo in him what was never undone in you? You don't know, but you want to try. For the first time, maybe ever, you want to try. Because there's more to shaping a blacksmith than heat and pressure. There's also silence. The kind that holds space instead of crushing it. And maybe if you're careful, if you're gentle, if you catch yourself before the next shout, maybe the boy will learn something better than what you were taught. You tell yourself it's time, that you've earned a day. The fire can stay cold. The tools can hang untouched. The apprentice can manage on his own, at least for a morning. You even lie down, not on the bench, not hunched in the corner, but properly, on a cot with a blanket that doesn't smell of soot. The room is still. The forge is quiet. Outside, there's the sound of birds, wind through leaves, distant chatter. All the things you thought you missed. But instead of comfort, it brings unease. Your hands twitch without the weight of the hammer. Your ears search for the familiar clang that never comes. Every minute stretches. You feel your chest tighten, not from pain but from absence. The silence isn't peace, it's void. And you don't know what to do with it. You get up before long. Tell yourself you just forgot to check the bellows, that the coals need turning, that the apprentice probably needs guidance, even though he didn't call. But really, it's because sitting still feels like waiting to die. You walk around the forge, touching things at random. Tongs, horseshoes, a chisel with a nick that's been there for years. You pretend to inspect them. You pretend there's a reason. The apprentice looks up, surprised. "I thought you were resting," he says. You shrug. Say nothing. Because what would you tell him? That the forge has replaced your heartbeat? That without its rhythm you don't feel alive? He wouldn't understand. Maybe one day he will. But not yet. You simply nod toward the anvil and pick up the hammer again, just to feel it in your hand. Later you try again. Sit by the door, where the sun cuts across the floor. It's warm, soft, a little golden, the kind of light people write about. But even that makes you restless. You shift in your seat. Then you notice how your foot taps without thinking, in time with a rhythm that isn't there. Your muscles still remember the tempo of the forge, the swing, the clang, the hiss. Your body misses it, craves it. Not because it's joyful, though it never was, but because it was certain. The forge never lied. Fire was fire. Steel was steel. You knew what was needed. Rest, though. Rest asks you to be still with your thoughts, with the questions, with the memories, with the years. You'd rather not. So you get up again. By nightfall, you're back inside. The fire's lit again, low, unnecessary, but comforting. The apprentice is gone home, but you stay. You work on nothing in particular. Just move metal for the sake of movement. You tell yourself it's maintenance. You tell yourself it's preparation. But in truth, it's fear. The quiet has teeth, and you feel it biting when the hammer is still. You never learned to rest. You were never taught how. And now, when the chance finally comes, it feels like a threat. You don't know what it means to be a blacksmith without a need, without urgency, without war or orders or smoke, and so you keep going. Not because there's work, but because without it, there's only silence, and you're not ready to face what silence says. Not yet. Maybe never. Your fingers don't bend the way they used to. The joints stay swollen even in the morning, and the ache begins before the sun is up. Some days you hold the hammer and have to remind yourself how. You flex your hands, waiting for the numbness to pass, but it doesn't. Not really. It just becomes tolerable. You've stopped expecting ease. Instead, you count how many swings you can make before the pain turns sharp. Today, someone brings in a blade, not ornate, not precious, but well used. A kitchen knife, maybe, or a butcher's cleaver. The edge is dull, the tang cracked, the handle split. You should hand it off to the apprentice, but you don't. Something about it calls to you. Something about its tiredness feels familiar. You sit down slowly, grip the file, and begin. Every motion is deliberate. Not slow from care, slow because your hands demand it. You brace your elbow to compensate for the lack of grip. You steady the blade between blocks of wood so you don't have to pinch. You've learned to adapt. Over time, your body stopped asking permission. Now it simply works with what remains. The filing takes longer than it should. The rhythm is uneven. You stop often to shake out your fingers, to press your knuckles against your thigh for warmth. The metal doesn't mind. It waits. It yields. It lets you reshape it, little by little, until the edge begins to shine again. No one watches. No one rushes you. There's just the whisper of steel against stone, the sigh of the fire, the slow breath of a man who's done this for too long to stop. The apprentice offers help once, says he can take over. You don't snap at him. You just shake your head and say, "Not this one." He steps back. He understands, or at least pretends to. You wonder as you work if this is the last blade you'll fix yourself. You wonder how many more your hands can hold before they betray you entirely. But the blade doesn't ask those questions. It doesn't care how long you take or how much it costs you. It only wants to be sharp again, useful. And in that simplicity, there's comfort. You work until your shoulders burn and your fingers lock. You work until the steel is ready to be whole again. You don't rush the handle. You wrap it clean, bind it tight. It doesn't have to be beautiful, just strong enough to last. When it's done, you place it on the bench and sit back, chest heaving as if you'd climbed a hill. Your hands are stiff, curled inwards, as if clinging to the shape of the work. You don't try to open them yet. You just look at what you've made. A small thing, unremarkable, but real, fixed. You remember the first nail you forged, crooked, useless, but yours. And now this. Not perfect, not fast, but finished. You nod to yourself once, not pride, just acknowledgement. You still can. That's enough. The apprentice watches from a distance, saying nothing, and you wonder if he sees it. Not the blade, but the effort, the choice, the quiet refusal to quit. You hope he does, because one day his hands will ache too, and maybe then he'll remember how you kept going, one blade at a time. He doesn't know you're watching at first. He stands where you once stood, back straight, sleeves rolled, holding the hammer like it belongs to him now. His shoulders are broader than yours were at his age, his stance more confident. You should feel proud. You do, in part, but it's buried beneath something else, a strange, quiet fear you weren't expecting. He lifts the hammer and brings it down with the kind of force that makes the anvil sing. The sound echoes through the forge like it always has, but now it lands differently in your chest. You see the way he squints through the smoke, the way he tightens his grip just before the strike. These are things he learned from watching you. Habits passed down without words, and for the first time you wonder if you should have taught him something else instead. You lean against the doorframe, careful not to let the boards creak. He's focused, lost in the rhythm of work. It's not the first time he's forged alone, but it's the first time you've stepped back far enough to really see him do it. He doesn't look like a boy anymore. He looks like a blacksmith, one who believes in what he's doing, one who hasn't yet learned the weight of years. You watch the sweat bead on his brow, the way he wipes it away with the back of his wrist. Just like you do, he's good. Not perfect, but good. That should be enough. But as he moves, a question rises in you like smoke. Have you given him a craft or a cage, a legacy or a life sentence? The hammer rings again, and you flinch, not from the sound, but from the answer you can't quite find. He notices you eventually, glances up, surprised, then nods once before going back to work. No words pass between you. They're not needed. You taught him to measure heat by color, to test edge by sound, to trust his instincts over his doubts. You also taught him to keep going when tired, to bite back pain, to finish what he starts no matter what it costs. That last one, that's the one you worry about most, because he learned it too well. He doesn't stop when his hand cramps, doesn't pause when the hammer slips. He just resets and swings again. You want to call out, want to tell him it's okay to rest, to fail, even to walk away if it ever becomes too much. But the words don't come. Maybe because you've never said them to yourself. The blade he's working on is nearly done. He quenches it with care, watches the steam rise, inspects it like he's judging his own worth in its edge. You used to do the same, maybe still do. You step inside slowly. He doesn't turn, just says, "Almost finished." And you nod, even though he can't see you. You stand beside him, close enough to feel the heat, but far enough not to interfere. Together, you watch the metal cool, and in that moment, something shifts. He doesn't need you to guide him anymore. Not with the forge, not with the work. But maybe he still needs you for something else. To show him there's more to life than hammers and heat. And maybe you need him too, to remind you of who you were before all of this, before the forge became your whole name. So you stand there. Two blacksmiths, one at the beginning, one somewhere near the end, and the fire between you burns the same as it always has. But this time you both see it a little differently. Not just as a tool, but as a choice. Not just as a duty, but as a weight. One that must be carried with care or passed on with kindness. He doesn't ask for approval. He doesn't need it. And you don't offer advice. Not today. You simply watch. And in that quiet you hope. Not for his success, not for perfection, but for balance, for mercy, for the courage to shape a life that isn't just work. Because love can be a forge too, and you pray silently that you haven't passed on only fire. You wake before the sun, as you always do, but today it's the cough that rouses you, sharp and deep, scraping its way out of your throat like a rusted nail. You sit up slowly, spitting into the cloth you keep beside the bed. The flecks are dark, not quite red, not quite black, just iron. You tell yourself it's soot, dust from the forge, a bit of ash you must have breathed in too deep. You don't say illness. You don't say age. Those are things that happen to other people, people who lived differently, who worked less, who didn't swallow smoke every day of their lives. You run your hand down your chest and feel the familiar tightness. It's always worse in the mornings. You pour water and rinse your mouth, ignoring the metallic taste. It's nothing new. It's just part of you now. The forge hasn't started yet, but you go anyway. The air is cold, damp, and quiet. For a moment, you pretend you're just going to check the bellows, maybe clean the tools, prepare the workspace. But you know better. You light the coals before your body has even fully woken. You need the heat, not just for the work, but for the ache in your bones, the stiffness in your chest. The fire makes it easier to breathe, somehow. Or maybe it just hides what's hard to face. You cough again while stacking wood, this time more violently. You lean on the anvil for support, gripping its edge like a man half drowned. The sound echoes in the stillness. There's no one around to hear. Just you and the fire. Just you and the work, always the work. Later, the apprentice arrives. He says good morning. You grunt in return. He doesn't ask why you're pale or why your voice is hoarse. He's seen enough by now to know what not to say. You take a seat near the coals and pretend to inspect something. A bent hinge, a crack in the floor, anything to stay sitting without admitting why. You wipe your face on your sleeve and hope he doesn't notice how soaked it already is. The heat feels good, but your lungs are heavy, as if each breath is dragging through a field of nails. You remember when they used to sing, deep, full, steady. Now they rattle. And you wonder, not for the first time, if there's iron in your blood, iron in your breath. If you've spent so long near the forge that it has fused with you from the inside out. You make it through the day. You always do. But it costs more now. Every movement pulls. Every silence hums with the effort of staying upright. You drink more water. Pretend your hands are shaking from cold, not fatigue. When the apprentice offers to finish the last piece, you let him. Not because you're feeling generous, but because your vision is starting to blur. You sit again, this time by the door, where the air is easier to breathe. You cough once more, and it's deep, guttural, final. You taste metal. Feel the weight of something rising in your throat. You spit it out and don't look. You don't need to. You know, it's not soot anymore. It's not dust. It's you. And still, you'll rise again tomorrow, because the forge is not what you do. It's what you are. Even if it's burning you from the inside out. It doesn't happen in a moment. There's no ceremony, no words carved into wood, no final clang that says, "This was it." Just another morning, colder than usual, when your fingers won't wrap around the handle. You try, like always. Grip the hammer with the stubbornness that's kept you going for decades. But it slips. Not far, just enough to make you feel it in your chest. You catch it, barely, and look down at your hand. It's the same hand that once shaped swords, bent hinges, straightened plows. But now the joints swell before noon, and even resting hurts. You sit, quiet. The fire's already going. Your son started it. The apprentice, no, he's not an apprentice anymore, is working beside him. The hammer's still warm, still useful. Just not to you. You hold it a little longer, not because you think it will get easier, but because letting go deserves a second more. You run your thumb over the smoothness of the grip, over the worn place where your palm used to press. You remember the first time you held it. Too heavy, too loud, too much. Now it feels like a part of you. Or maybe it's what made you. You look across the forge. He's watching. He doesn't ask. He knows. Maybe he's known longer than you. You call him over, not loud, just enough. He wipes his hands on his apron, walks the same path you've walked thousands of times. He stands in front of you, tall now, steady, and you hold the hammer out. He doesn't reach for it immediately. He waits, because he knows this isn't a gift. It's a weight. When he does take it, your hand lingers, just for a breath. Not because you're unsure, but because some part of you still thinks you'll need it tomorrow. He says nothing. You nod. That's all. There's no speech, no lesson. You taught him everything without saying much. That's how it's done. You look at your empty hand. It trembles, even at rest. You don't hide it. Not anymore. He goes back to the workbench, cradling the hammer the way you once did, with a kind of reverence that doesn't need explanation. You sit by the fire, listening to the rhythm you know better than your own heartbeat. Metal meets metal. Sparks fly. Not as high as yours once did, not yet. But enough, more than enough. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen. You don't leave the forge. Not that day, not the next. You still show up, still sit in the same spot, still watch the work. Sometimes you correct him, gently, with a gesture, a shake of the head, a tap on the table. But most of the time, you just watch. He makes mistakes. You did too. He learns. You did too. One day he'll hand the hammer to someone else. You won't be there to see it. But you hope he'll do it the same way. Quietly, without drama, without the need to explain. Just a simple act of knowing when it's time. And when that moment comes, maybe he'll remember this morning. The fire, the silence, the weight of the hammer in his hand, and the warmth of your hand. letting go. The chair creaks beneath you, the same one you built years ago out of leftover timber and stubbornness. It doesn't fit your back the way it used to. Maybe it never did. But it's close enough to the fire to warm your knees, and close enough to the forge to hear every strike. That's all you need now. Your hands rest on your thighs, fingers curled not from tension, but from habit. The hammer's not in your grip anymore. It hasn't been for some time. Instead, your son stands in your old place, facing the flames, shoulders taut with purpose. He moves like someone who's not thinking, just doing, not hesitating, just knowing. It's not perfect, but it's his. And as the steel meets the anvil again and again, you nod. Not to him, not to anyone, just to yourself. This is how it's meant to be. Outside, the day moves on. Light shifts through the high window, cutting through the haze of smoke and steam. The tools on the walls rattle occasionally from the force of the strikes, like old ghosts remembering their names. You sit still. That's what your body allows now. Sometimes your breath catches in your throat, and you press your tongue to your teeth to quiet the sound. He doesn't need to hear that. He needs rhythm, silence, focus. You offer all three just by being there. Sometimes he glances your way, not for approval, not for advice, but to feel your presence. Like a stone near the fire, you radiate memory. You are the shape of everything he's learned, everything he still carries. And you nod again. Because you understand. Because words would only take something away. There are moments when you forget where you end and he begins, when you see your own hands in his movements, your old mistakes in his hesitation, your pride in his persistence. But you don't interrupt. That's not your place anymore. You've said all that needed saying with the way you lived, with the way you rose each morning, with the way you held the hammer until it couldn't be held. The forge taught both of you patience, and now it teaches you restraint. You listen to the sound of shaping, iron into blade, sweat into skill, pain into purpose. The music of continuation. The forge has always been more than heat and metal. It's a rhythm passed from hand to hand, one that doesn't stop just because yours have stilled. Evening comes, slow and orange. He finishes the piece, a horseshoe maybe, or a tool for a neighbor. He places it in water. The hiss fills the space between you. He doesn't look at you, doesn't have to. He knows you watched. You know he knows. And again, you nod. Because it's all there. The weight, the trust, the quiet agreement that what you built together will outlast both of you. He turns to clean, and you stay seated. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because moving would break something sacred. So you wait. Let the heat of the coals brush against your boots. Let the silence gather around your shoulders like an old, familiar coat. The day ends as it began, with the work, with the fire, with you by the door, nodding to everything that still holds. There is no announcement, no sudden stop, just a quiet dimming, like the coals in the forge when no one feeds them. You still wake early, but later than before. You still walk to the forge, but slower now, with pauses between steps. You still sit in the chair by the door, but some days you fall asleep there before the sun is high. No one says anything. They know. Your son moves around you the way people move around old stones in the road, with care, with familiarity, with the understanding that they've been there longer than anyone remembers. You don't mind. You're not angry. You don't wish for strength again. You just notice that each day you speak less, eat less, weigh less. You don't hurt. Not in the way people expect. It's not pain that comes. It's distance. As if you're stepping back from the world, inch by inch, without moving at all. The tools stay where they are. They don't call to you anymore. You still hear the hammering, steady, firm, full of intent. It doesn't belong to you now, and that's fine. It never really did. You were just the hands for a while. Now it's someone else's turn. Your cough no longer startles you. You don't hide the trembling of your hands or the way your fingers sometimes forget how to close. It's all just part of the fading, like a shadow pulling itself toward the end of the day. You nod when someone walks past. You smile faintly if a child looks in through the doorway. You drink water when it's handed to you, but don't ask for it. You eat what you're given, but rarely finish. It's not that you've lost interest. You're just full. Not in the belly, but in the years. You've had enough of everything. There's a day when the fire's burning, and you don't stand to warm your hands. Your legs feel too heavy. You tell yourself you'll rise in a moment, but the moment doesn't come. Your son finishes a blade and brings it over for you to see. You look at it, touch the edge and nod, not just at the craftsmanship, but at the fact that he thought to bring it to you. You say, "Good," and it's the first word you've spoken all day, maybe all week. He smiles, but it's tight at the edges, like he's not sure if he should be happy or afraid. You don't ease his mind. You don't have the words for that anymore. What's happening isn't tragic. It isn't a loss. It's just a passing, like smoke through an open roof. You can't catch it. You can't stop it. You can only let it rise. The world outside moves on. Crops grow. Children cry. Someone gets married, someone else buried. You hear the talk, but it doesn't cling to you. Your thoughts are slower now, like boots through mud. Sometimes you stare at the fire for hours, not thinking at all, just feeling the warmth. You used to think you'd go with a shout, or a fall, or a final moment of thunder. But now you know, most men don't end. They just lessen. A little more each day until they're more memory than matter. That's what you're becoming. A memory that sits in a chair. A name people whisper when they talk about the best horseshoes they ever had. You don't need more. You never did. You fade without pain, without glory, without a feast or a song. Just quieter, just smaller, just less. And in that quiet, there is peace. Even after your chair sits empty, the forge doesn't fall silent. The bellows still breathe. The fire still roars. The anvil still sings beneath the hammer. But those who listen closely hear something more. Not the echo of your footsteps, not the sound of your voice, but your rhythm. The one you laid down with every strike, every year, every quiet decision to rise and work again. It's in the timing of the hits, the way the sparks rise, the way the tools hang on the wall just so. You're not here anymore, but you never really left. You've been folded into the ritual, into the daily heat and motion, until the forge itself remembers how you moved, how you shaped, how you stayed. Children run past the open door, and their parents hush them with a glance inside. Not out of fear, but reverence. The place carries your weight, not as a ghost, but as a presence, a certainty. Your son stands where you once stood. He doesn't imitate you. He doesn't need to. The learning is deeper than mimicry. It's in his bones, in the way he picks up the hammer, in the way he knows when to cool the iron and when to strike again. He doesn't say your name aloud, but when he works, you're there. When he breathes in the smoke and feels the ache in his back and wipes sweat from his eyes, it's not loneliness he feels. It's you, because this is how you live now, in the rhythm of the work, in the heartbeat of the forge. Years will pass. His hair will gray. His hands will stiffen. And one day he'll sit where you sat, and he'll nod to a new pair of hands, smaller, uncertain, curious. The hammer will pass again, and with it, your rhythm, your way of standing, your quiet refusal to stop. They may not know your stories. They may not remember the way you smiled, or how your voice dipped when you spoke about blades. But they'll feel you, in the cadence of creation, in the silence that follows each finished piece, in the fact that the forge still burns, still matters, still stands. You're not in the grave. You're not in the past. You're in every swing, every coal, every drop of sweat that lands on glowing iron. And so you stay. Not because you held on, but because you gave everything. You became the forge, and the forge goes on. No one says your name at dinner. No one carves it in stone. But each morning, when the fire is stoked and the first strike rings out into the morning air, the world remembers. Not with words, not with grief, but with motion, with purpose, with heat. You are not gone. You are the sound, the spark, the stillness between blows. And for as long as someone stands in that light, raises a hammer, and shapes something out of the raw and the real, you are here. You are always here. And that's the life you lived, not in pages of history books, but in heat, in habit, in hands that never stopped. No glory, no titles, just work, just legacy. So now let it all settle. Let the embers glow soft behind your eyes. You've heard the rhythm. You've walked the years. Rest now. Tomorrow we'll tell another story.